Hey guys, this is VJ from VJ's Tennis, where it's all things tennis. Today we're going to be going through strings, so different types of tennis strings. We're also going to talk about gauges, tension, and when you should really restring your racket, or how often you should restring your racket. But without further ado, I have some notes on my phone that I will go through with you on this video. And yeah, let's hit it and let's dive in. Before we go through the stringing materials, we'll talk about gauges. So what does gauges actually mean? So gauges is determine how thick the string is. So most strings you'll see, most of them would have round shapes. Others would have like a hexagonal kind of looking shape, or it's basically the diameter of how round or thick it is in the string. So the thicker the string, the more control and durability that you get. Whereas the lowest thickness of the string, that equals more spin and more power. So in terms of gauges, gauges you can see on packets or reels in your tennis shops or whatever you're purchasing on the internet. They would consider having that measurement on the reel that would say 1.10 millimeter or 1.20 millimeter or 1.30 millimeter. Others would also, especially with that number and the millimeter unit, it'll also say things like 16G or 17G or 15G, 19G. But however, if you are confused of what the G numbers actually mean, don't worry, I have a few details to go through with you. There are 15G, 16G, 17G, 18G, and 19G. Now, what do they mean? 15G is equivalent to 1.35 millimeter to 1.40 millimeter. 16G is equivalent to 1.25 millimeter to 1.30. 17G is equivalent to 1.20 millimeter to 1.25 millimeter. 18G is equivalent to 1.15 millimeter to 1.20. And 19G is equivalent to 1.10 to 1.15 millimeters. So, there you have it with the gauges. To me, this is a personal view. I would like to go with looking at the number and the millimeter, because you can, if you understand 16G, 15G, okay, that's great. However, you need to also know exactly how thick it really actually is. So for me personally, I would always go through millimeters. So tension. What is tension? So tension is basically how tight your racket is when the strings are already in your racket. It also depends really on your preferences, how tight you want it or how less tight you want it. And it also measures in between pounds and kilos. Now, most people who want to measure or get, like for example, let's say a stringer asks you what your tension would be. Most people would say pounds, but there may be a few instant cases where people may ask you, I want it in 25 kilos. Now, if that worries you and you'd be like, oh, what is 25 kilos? What does that mean in pounds? No, don't worry, because most stringers' machines, they would have a converter of either putting it in 25 kilograms, or they could have a setting to switch to pounds, and they can go 50, 48, etc. Higher the tension, the more control you'll have. The lower the tension, the more power you gain. If I was to talk about in pounds, I wouldn't necessarily go in kilos because I've never really used kilos myself personally. But the lowest I would go in terms of tension, I would say 45 pounds. Most rackets on their recommended specs would say £48 to 60, 65. And in terms of the highest tension, I would probably consider 65 and above. I know there are a few players, I heard, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, I'm not sure, but apparently Dustin Brown has his tension around 80 or 90 pounds. And I'm thinking, that is really tight. But again, that's a rumor. I don't know if that is true. But what do you think about that? Let me know in the comments down below, because I have no idea if that's actually true or not. Now, when or how often should you restring your racket? Now, that's a very good question. Many people would typically... It also depends on the budget as well, and how many players or club players or recreational players, how often they really actually want to restring. But I will give you a general rule of thumb, and I would actually say the playability on strings, and especially when it comes to polyester strings, they would technically last between 2 to 3 months of playability and performance. Now, that's normal. You can't really hide away from that, especially when people, I know that leaves their rackets, some of them, not all of them, but some people leave their rackets just sitting there for like 1 year and they will still play with it. Now, it is good to save money, but you also got to remember that if you're playing with dead strings, the problem with that is the ball... when you're hitting the ball, it can be very inconsistent. So it could either go short in the net, it could go long. It's very erratic. The consistency is very erratic. So what I would suggest, preferably, you should be stringing your racket at least 5 times a year. But however, if that is not what you prefer, like you're probably spending between, I don't know, let's say $30 to $50 a restring. And that's in Australian as well. So $30 to $50 in Australian AUD. If that is a bit of a concern, I would encourage anyone who strings rackets that I string for them, I would recommend at least going between 1, 2 or 3 times a year. So that's probably how often you should restring. But if you are at a tournament level or whatnot, you also do need to pay attention to that, because once you doubt your equipment and you doubt your strings or whatever, then it's kind of technically game over psychologically. And well, the other way to replace your strings is if you break them. I mean, duh, it's obvious. You have to do that. Also, the biggest quote that I find that is it's actually a very good quote. It actually relates to many people who are really into tennis and really want to hit great shots and everything. There's a really good quote that I found, and it's basically known as, stringing is a necessity, not a luxury. So, because when you think about it, obviously I'm talking about the pro players, but most pro players on the ATP Tour or the WTA Tour, they have the luxury to get as many restrings as possible in one tournament. I can't even tell you how many, because you literally have your jaws dropped. It's crazy. But they obviously can afford to do that. But if you are concerned about the budget, I would say at least 1 to 3 times a year. So now we're going to go through the string materials. So there's typically 4 types of categories. But in each of those categories, of course, you'll find different versions, different kind of materials. But I'd like to keep it very simple in this video. And I would like to go through the first one, and that is synthetic gut. So synthetic gut is pretty much a very affordable string. It's probably mostly useful for club players if they just want to, if they don't take it seriously, or recreational players. It's a string that most people would have in their racket because it's so affordable. And the reason why I say it's affordable is because if you're looking for a reel, so this is what a reel looks like. This is basically, but you're looking at between, you can get reels between, if you're lucky enough, maybe $20 to $200, and I have seen that for many online stores. So reels, you will pay between $20 to $200 a reel, which is about 200 meters string. Or if you're looking at packets, you'll probably look at between $5 to $25 a packet. Now the advantages with synthetic gut, like I said, it's very affordable, very good price points. It can be somewhat arm-friendly, but it's also a good all-round choice. And when we look at the disadvantages, it's average in performance and playability. It's not an extraordinary string under any category. It can sometimes feel a little bit mushy or mushy. I think that's the word, mushy. Let me know in the comments down below what you know, if that's the way how you pronounce it. I think it's mushy, and it could sometimes feel brittle, and it's less durable for big hitters. And you'll constantly, if you have a full bed of like all around synthetic gut, you'll always constantly straighten your strings each time. So this is the synthetic gut. Now this is made by Wilson. You can see the material of it here. So most synthetics guts, they generally would have a bit of clear or like a yellowy kind of colour, and sometimes rainbow. I've seen those quite a few times, but this is what a synthetic gut looks like. So, and this one here, this is a 1.30 millimeter. So how round the thickness it is, that's about 1.30 millimeter. Natural gut. So natural gut, it's got very good stories. And I've never ever actually strung with a natural gut before, but that is something that I would love to experience one day. It is a very complex string. It has been there historically for a very, very long time, but it has quite a punch. The advantages of natural gut, it has higher playability and high performance, better tension maintenance, good arm comfort, especially for people with tennis elbow, and remains playable in higher tensions. Now, the disadvantages. It is less durable, and for stringers, if they're not careful, you do generally have to take extra care when you're doing the stringing process. It's ridiculously expensive. So, natural guts, they are only available in packets, as from what I've seen and what I've known. So you're looking at between $45 to $100 for one packet. Yep, you heard me. $45 or to $100 for one packet, which is enough for one racket. And this is a big thing, and everybody needs to know this, because this is another disadvantage if you're not careful. Lack of care or storing it in a hot or moisturized environment can actually result in string breakage. And even if it is, even if it's already stringed up, you need to make sure that you store your rackets in a cool and safe place. So that way it can expand the life a little bit longer. And also, when I mean lack of care for storing it in hot or moisturized environments, it will break in the middle of the stringing process as well. So make sure you store natural gut carefully. Multi-filament. So multi-filament is used in a lot of hybrid stringing. So hybrid stringing is basically a hybrid of either, most people would use a poly in the mains and then multi-filament in the crosses. And what does that give you? So it gives you a combination of power, spin, control, and feel. And for some people who don't like full bed polyester strings, you can mix it up and put a softer string, and it will provide somewhat kind of comfort. So multi-filament's what's good for. The advantages of it is good comfort and feel, less vibration, and good amount of power. It also is depending on what kind of multi you use, because all of them are pretty different. And they have got a wide range of price points as well. So it can be somewhat affordable, but most popular ones are kind of expensive. The disadvantages of it is also less durable, especially for big hitters, less control. Certain multis or certain multi-filaments can feel a bit mushy. And if you're using a full bed of multis, especially with synthetic gut, you constantly have to straighten your strings each time. When we talk about prices and reels, you will look at between probably for a reel, and most reels would come in either 120 meters or 200, and that's for most of the materials except natural gut. But the reels for multis is about $60 to $400 from what I've researched. And again, these prices that I mentioned to you, these are all in AUD. And prices in packets, you're looking at between $15 to $45. So this is the multi-filament here. This is Head Master. In fact, this is probably the cheapest multi-filament I've ever owned. But it is decent. It's not like overly great, but it does a job. And this is 1.40 millimeter. So you can kind of see all those kind of, and also again, like synthetic gut, generally they have the same color as what a synthetic gut would look like. Multi-filament are basically the same too. And last but not least, and this is probably the most preferred string for many people using in today's game, and including the Pro Tour as well, polyester. Okay, so polyester is a stiff string, but it is perfect for people who are looking for durability. Now, when we talk about the advantages, it has spin potential, very good durability for big hitters. You don't have to constantly straighten your strings all the time. Can be good playability potential on certain polys, and also, because it is a low-powered string, it gives you a bit of freedom to swing through the ball a little more, so you don't have to feel like you're being too attentive when you're afraid of hitting the balls long or hitting it short. So don't be afraid to swing a little bit more when you're using a full bed of poly. Disadvantages are, like I said, it is low-powered. For people who have tennis elbow or arm issues, that may not be good for you, so I suggest you should try use a hybrid stringing. So you can add either a multi in the mains and poly in the cross, or you can switch it around by having poly in the mains and hybrid in the crosses. But again, that's just my view and opinion. But make sure, if you do have tennis elbow and whatnot, make sure you check with your doctor or physiotherapist or whatnot, and maybe they can sort of explain to you what you're capable of, and then go through with your coach, and he can sort of guide you, or he or she can guide you with what kind of string you need. And some polys, they do generally lose tension quickly, more so than like a multi or a natural gut. Or maybe sometimes synthetic gut as well too. But realistically, as long as the stringer is consistent with the job, you generally won't have that much issue. Polyesters. Now, so with polyester strings, you can see how like it's kind of a single color. Now they're available in most colors. Like you'll see like blue, yellow, green, any of those kind of things. And also, this is about a 1.28 millimeter as well. So I don't know if you can... Yeah, it's hard to focus, but you'll understand the idea. So polyesters are very good for big hitters. And also, because I mentioned... I don't know if I'm saying it right. It probably is a hexagonal shape. I believe it is. But... either way, so this one, the hexagonal shape here, this is a 1.35 millimeter. So you can, it's probably hard to see, but this is a Volcal Cyclone, so most people will know what this string is. And with the hexagonal shape, what it does, it provides you a bit of extra spin or bite into the ball. Sometimes can be power, but I'd like to relate it as a lot of spin potential with this polyester. And there you have it. That is all for today in this video. Well, I hope you learned a lot about strings. And don't forget to give it a like, thumbs up, leave a comment down below. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them as quick as I can. But take care, take it easy, have a great one, have a blessed day. Peace.